Hello, everyone. This is Mike Bellbauer from the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation, coming to you from the Flagler Voice podcast studio. We have a great guest in our studio this morning, and we will be right back to introduce you. Okay, here we are. We are back at the studio, ready to go. In the studio today was a gentleman that I got to meet, and we just were talking about it probably about 6 years ago, 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. And we met at a Bible study that we were both going to, Thursday night Bible study with men at Panera Bread, and got to know Michael. This is Michael Brick that I'll be introducing you to. And he's here today to talk about his road of recovery. So welcome, Michael. Glad to have you with us today. So, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we just, the goal here is to let people in our community know that there is hope, as you see up on the screen, to let other people know that are in the world of recovery at this point in time, to know that there is hope. We can go, you can get there. Michael's been on his road. He'll talk a little bit about his road to recovery and where he's been a little bit, but mostly where he is now, what he's come to, the difference between yesterday and today. And I'm talking about not just 24 hours. So, Mike, give us a little information on you, where you've been, how you've been, what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I moved to Flagler County when I was 4 years old. I'm 34 now, so I've lived here most of my life. Grew up in Bunnell, live in Palm Coast now. I came from good stock, good family atmosphere, no drugs and alcohol ever in the house. And had a really good upbringing, playing sports and doing my thing. And then, the people I hung out with, I'm not blaming anybody, but I just, it's part of the reason, right? The people I hung out with, started making bad choices, and I wanted to fit in, so I started, with your recreational drinking in high school and smoking weed, and I never know when I crossed that boundary, when it became an actual problem. But after high school, it was still fun. It was still a party. I started getting into some legal trouble at that point too. Again, by the people I hung out with. Um, I've learned that for an alcoholic and drug addict, there's only three places you end up: jails, institutions, and death.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't worry about dying, right? 'Cause we didn't have that kind of stuff back then, right? I didn't know about an emotional death or spiritual death. We'll talk about that later. Um, but I wasn't crazy. I wasn't going to end up in an asylum or an institution. But I always got arrested. I always got in trouble with the law, right? I didn't get every time I drank, I didn't get arrested. But every time I was getting arrested, I had been drinking.
I gotcha.
So, but again, I didn't know there was a problem there. And I met these two guys in a jail cell, bringing an AA meeting into there, and I just went because I was bored. They handed me a pamphlet talking about these 12 steps. So, I started looking at them and checking off the ones that applied and checking off the ones I didn't think were necessary. And I crossed out about half of them. I'm pretty sure I'm not alcoholic. And I got to this step 8 and 9, where we're talking about making an amends, and I didn't know what that really meant at the time, but it looked like an I'm sorry. And I felt I owed my mom an apology, right? So raised my hand, and I asked the guy, I was like, hey man, we just kind of doing, leave these, right? I believe in God. I've been saved when I was a little kid. And he's like, no, it don't work like that. You got to sit down knee to knee with another man, and he's going to take you to these 12 steps, and he's going to introduce you to a higher power of your understanding. I'm like, well, I know God. I just said that, right? I'm good. So I'm going to fast forward 10 years.
Okay.
Right? And fast forward in 10 years is a lot of in and out of jails, on and off probation, never completed, prison for 4 years, and coming home and being worse than I ever was. Every time I started again or had a little break, it was just worse and worse and worse. So I'm back in jail. And by the way, like if I got a bond, I got an option still. I'm not at rock bottom yet with a bond. So I'm in jail, no bond, revoked bond, two separate cases. Nobody's answering the phone. Nobody wants anything to do with me. I've burned every bridge again. broken every heart again. And you know, I hit what we call rock bottom, right? And I reached out to God in a jail cell, and I cried out to Him for help. I believe that that's the only time that God can really use you is when you have no other option, right? Because if you got another option, you don't need Him as much.
At least you don't think you do.
Right, right. So I reached out to God, and a couple days later they called for an AA meeting, and those same two guys were in there 10 years later talking about the same solution. I had no idea what that solution really was, but I figured if they could do it, maybe I could do it. And that was my introduction to recovery. So you know that was over 6 years ago now. I've had some ups and downs and some bumps and bruises. You know, I don't work a perfect program, but man, my life has just really excelled. You know, and every time something happens, I got a spiritual toolkit. You know, every time I'm going through something, I got a group of men that support me. Um, I've restored relationships with friends and families that I, never thought possible again. I truly have a blessed life, whether I feel it or not.
Yeah, that's important. Being doing what we've been doing for the last 12 years, I've seen people come in and out of the programs being successful. And the ones that seem to have the most difficult time in maintaining that success is the ones that don't surround themselves
Yeah,
with a
absolutely.
community that's there for them. So if they have those downs, there's somebody there to talk to.
Yeah.
Somebody
Thank
that,
God I don't have to do anything alone anymore.
that's
Not
it.
one major decision, and most minor. I don't do anything without talking to another man about it. I got my road dogs is what I call them. I got my sponsor through AA, and he helps me. We talk,
Yep.
daily. And then I got my boys, my friends, and to be honest, like I said, I grew up in this town, but I got a couple friends from back in the day, but my best friends today are people I met in the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I dial 911, they're already in the truck. They don't even know where they're headed yet, but they're on their way. And then on the minor stuff too, I don't have to make, I talk about business and relationships and wants and dreams and hopes and goals. So it's a blessing to have that community because I know what a bad community will do for me. And again, I'm not trying to blame anybody else. I'm solely responsible for my actions, but it definitely, you know, it
People,
needs.
people, places, and things do play a very important part in the decisions that you make, and you have to learn about that because it's your choice
Right,
who you hang with, who you don't, and you got to make those choices. Say, okay, at this point in my life, I can't hang with you anymore.
right.
It's not right for me. It maybe not right for you. Whatever, and you're not doing it in anger
Hmm.
because you were part of that at one point in time yourself.
Absolutely.
You were bringing, so, but people, places, and things, getting a community of support that is out there and you're part of it for them is such an important part of the world of recovery. The ones that I see have not been able to make it yet haven't understood that once they get to a certain part, it's still, tomorrow is still an important part. So we maintain that community, those relationships in the drug court program. We try to tell people when they're graduating that we're still here for you.
Right.
Okay. You might graduate the program, but the next day, the whole team is still there. So if you need stuff, we're still there for you. And I
Absolutely.
support your support groups like AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery. Whatever one works for you
Hmm.
is the one that works for you.
Right.
So it's not us telling you that you got to be in this group or that group. Our personal feelings are the same. Like God plays such an important part of my life that without Him, without Jesus, I don't make it.
Yeah.
But I don't push that on somebody.
Right. I found my fellowship through Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And like I said, I believed in God since I was 8 years old. I believe I was saved, and the closest I ever got to God is when I didn't feel Him, believe in Him, tell Him where you at,
Mm-hmm.
and then He was able to work with me, and I truly believe that He was like, man, you ain't listening to me. Why don't you go hang out with a bunch of guys that are just like you, that you'll relate to? I know a lot of people that have found a relationship with God through Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, but I believe that God brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous because that's where I was able to really dig into, not just who, what, when, but why. right? I needed to know why, and that's where I met my guys, you know.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's where I get to help. You know, I speak at a detox center in St. Augustine every other Thursday, and that's the highlight of my week. Every other week, you know what I mean. I love getting to go there and doing that. I've been doing it for a couple years now, um,
Fantastic.
and it, you know, for one, it helps me selfishly, right? It helps me. You know, I got a less of a chance of drinking today if I'm doing something like that. But you know, we call it just delivering the pizza, or you know, in the Bible they talk about just throwing the seed out, right? And it's not my job to know where it falls or what happens to it, you know. But man, I go to these places, and then a week later I run into a guy at a meeting, or 6 months later I run into a guy at the gas station, and he was like, yeah, I've been sober for 6 months now, I got there, you know, you helped me. And it's just such a blessing, you know. It really helps me feel like I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's a definite part of all our lives. Uh, the Bible says we're supposed to be servants. We take the gifts that God has given us to bring to others that might need that gift can help them.
Absolutely.
And, you know, God never put you into the original position you were in, but he is available if you'll listen and desire to take that ugliness and turn it into something great.
Yeah.
And this is what I see what's happened to you.
My favorite saying is, well, one of them, I got a lot of them now, but God's up there playing chess while we're down here playing checkers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just trying to get kinged, but God's out there using pawns to take out queens and move this and that. You know, he's like you said, he didn't do the things that I did. I did them, right? But strategically, you know, he was able to use my failures, and now without my failures, you know, I'm not proud to say I'm a felon. But when I used to walk into the jail and be like, man, I sat in that exact seat, and this chaplain right here changed my life, or that guard right there kept me out of trouble, you know, and it can work for you too. You
Yeah.
know, like that's when I'm able to relate now to people, you
Yeah.
know, and like you were saying about the people, places, and things, you know, I have a lot of people reach out. I'm from here. And they reach out, they know I'm in recovery, and I tell them, hey, man, I'm here, but I'm over here. I'm not going over there. I'm not coming to find you. I'm not a 12-step kind of, you know, guy that'll pick up people from the trenches. That's not me. I don't go to those places. There's other people that's their ministry,
Right.
right? But you know, I do Monday things on Monday. I go to do Tuesday things on Tuesday. You know, it's Wednesday. I go to a meeting at 5:30 tonight if I'm off work in time, right? If you want some help, this is where I'll be. All right, and I'll introduce you to some people. You need a job, you might find somebody in here. You know, you need some spiritual advice. I know some people that come to these meetings, or I might be able to point you in the right direction to a church, you know. You need some food. I know the owner of the food pantry. Let's give him a call right now. I got his number, you know. But again, I can't help those who won't help themselves.
Yeah. And the key that you and so many of the people that I've been with over the last number of years have really realized that when you make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the road is now, instead of being totally winding, deep turns, it's getting straighter and straighter.
Yeah,
And every once in a while, there could be a bump. There could
sure.
be a big speed turn. But you've developed the tools, the understanding what might take if you've had a relapse or a slip to how to get back to where you were.
Right.
And what I try to let people understand and know that, you know, in the drug court program, if you use, okay, you'll lose some of your time. You have to make up all that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they say you've lost your clean days. But in reality, I tell people, you don't lose what you had.
Right.
Okay? So always remember that if there's a bump, if there's a slip, if there's a relapse, you already proved to yourself. Just go back to say, I did it before.
Right.
I can do it again, and I'll make it longer. I use, in my own life, my addiction was cigarettes.
Uh-huh.
I was a 2-pack a day guy. And I quit 6 times and relapsed 6 times before I got to the one time that made it.
Right.
And, you know, so my only big advantage over people that were getting arrested for drugs or alcohol abuse is that I couldn't get arrested for smoking.
Right.
Okay, and that,
Yep.
so I didn't have that over my head, but I finally realized that I was probably killing myself,
Right.
and I hung on to certain things that helped me that last time, which is now going on 42 years ago from the
Amen.
last puff I had, that I'm no longer a nicotine addict. But I also realize, because of the 6 times that I can't do it one time.
Yep.
Okay. And having that understanding and knowing where I've been, knowing what it took to get to where I needed to get to, which was not easy because, quite honestly, even the science will tell you that nicotine is one of the hardest things to give up, more than most of the addictive drugs. So I have an understanding what a lot of the people are going through, except for the fact of the possible incarcerations and jail time and stuff like that. And it's a road.
Yeah.
It's a road. I can tell you, I remember a couple of times when I relapsed on the smoking that I lied. You know, I figure people are not going to know that I'm smoking again.
Right.
You know, you stink like hell. They know. So you can lie all you want. People are going to know. So admitting the fact that I was screwing up helped me finally give it up. And then I hung on to a reason that I needed. I wanted to be around for my family and knew that I was killing myself if I wasn't.
Right.
So that gave me one of the things that I needed to hang on to do it. And then there was other people just like you have that have gone through it that were telling me, you can do it. You can do it. You want it? You really want it? If you really want it, you can do it. And that's what we're trying to do.
You know, you said a lot of good things there, talking about, you know, having that support system and, you know, the different relapses. You know, in AA, we say we don't shoot our wounded. You know, we hate to see you go, but we're so grateful to see you come back because you made it. You got another day to fight. You know, you're not starting over. You're starting with some experience. You know, like, and I love what you said. You did it once. You can do it again. You know, and I've been in jail. I've seen people cold turkey a lot of things. Right? We know that, you know, barbiturates and alcohol, you need some, you know, professional care. But that other stuff, man, I've seen some guys just wing off of it. You know, and nicotine, caffeine is another one too that, you know, that we're all addicted to. We don't want to admit it, right? Yeah, I just bought 100 Monsters the other day because they were on sale.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about the Monsters when we're off the air.
Yeah, I know. I think we've talked about this too. But yeah, you know, these guys come in, and I love what you were talking about with the smoking, right? I saw this thing one time, and that, you know, God knows it was going to take you 7 times to quit. Right. So when you failed 1, 2, 3 times, you started feeling discouraged. You started feeling like a letdown to your friends, family, God. You know, God knew it was going to be number 7. So He'd already done forgive you for the first 1 through 6 before you even did it. And you're over here beating yourself up over something God already forgave you for because He knew you weren't going to get it till 7. You know, I got a buddy. He can't get 30 days, you know, and he's had some time before that. So it's like, man, you've already done it once, right? Like, we know you can do it. You know, he's like, I just can't quit. And I'm like, no, you just can't stay quit, right? Quitting's easy. And if that's all this was about, whoever woke up before 7:30 has been sober longer than me today, right? Because all we got is for today. Yeah. It's easy to be sober.
I remember a gentleman that, I remember a gentleman that was part of one of the recovery groups saying he had been in 7 recovery houses, treatment facilities, before he finally got it. So it's that. And part of what we talked about earlier, letting the community know out there that some of us can be part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Absolutely.
And I do use this statement often so people will hear it and maybe get tired of it, but I don't really care. That if we keep looking at substance abuse, addiction, as some Hollywood movie, all taking place in the back alleys of New York, Chicago, L.A., Houston, Dallas.
Right.
That's not what it is. It's in every one of our neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
It has no barriers to do it. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin, your ethnicity. It has nothing to do with that, okay? It can happen anywhere. It can happen to anyone.
Yes, sir.
And what the public doesn't really have a good grasp on it is what made somebody that got into it to make that first bad choice. And more often than not, we find it's been early childhood trauma. Something has affected you. We've had it because of medical treatment that didn't provide the good ways of stopping taking some of those pills that they gave you. There's so many things in it, but it's whatever it is, it's covering up some kind of pain.
Sure.
And if we look at it and understand that, Okay. We can be part of the solution by not, can you imagine? And maybe you can because you've been through it, because you lost your family for a while and all that other stuff. When people look at you and say, you're going to be nothing but a bum. You're never going to get, and you're just terrible. You hear that often enough,
Oh yeah,
you believe it and you become it.
absolutely.
So what we got to do is the opposite. We got to provide that hope all the time.
Yeah, if you're not in a good place mentally, spiritually, or physically, someone's constantly bashing you down, right? Like you're gonna start believing that. You're gonna start feeling that way. One of my favorite sermons that I heard, I love talking about this any chance I get. It's called "My Maker is My Mirror," right? And basically the question is who do you allow? How do you view yourself, and who do you allow to hold the mirror, right? Do I hold the mirror, and I look at myself the way I do? Because if I'm not in a good position, if I'm not spiritually fit, I don't feel too good about myself.
Yep.
Or do I let other people, and especially with my record and my past, it just takes one search on Google to realize that I used to be, not so good of a person, right? Do I let other people, do I view myself the way other people do? Or do I let God hold my mirror, right? And do I view myself the way God views me, right? Well, how do I know how God views me? I gotta do some research. I gotta get into His Word. I gotta get around other guys that believe the same thing,
Right.
because if I look at myself the way God looks at me, I'm chosen, I'm forgiven, I'm blessed, I'm more than a conqueror, right? I mean, that list goes on and on, you know. And you talked about the solution with the community too. This was a big realization that I had that, drugs and alcohol were not my problem. They were my solution, right? And took away my solution and I'm left with the reason why drug and alcohol looked good to me, you know? I got to get down to those causes and conditions, right? I got to get down to, like you said, that past. And addiction has no judgment, no prejudice, right? I mean, you could have a great upbringing, I could have a bad upbringing, we both end up in the same AA meeting. You could have, and we get this, it has such a bad stigma on it, like you said, because of Hollywood, right?
Yep.
Back in the day, they thought smoking was cool because it was done in Hollywood. And now you think that, drug addiction is just, like you said, in the back alleyway, or it's this big gang thing, and this is
Mm-hmm.
Palm Coast, not Palm Compton, right? Like it's there, and it's just as deadly, but it's also just as depressing. Your neighbor could be dying of alcoholism in their garage at night, just waiting for someone to tell them they love them. It's not
Exactly.
such a scary, bad, you know, felony infested thing. It's a real thing that people are dying from. That can be helped, right? You
Yep.
said we have a solution today. And there's multiple different things. If you don't like AA, go to NA. If you don't like NA, go to Celebrate Recovery. It's a biblically 12-step program. I believe anybody can benefit from a 12-step program. You don't have to have an ick,
Right.
right? Because we all suffer from something. And the good thing is we have a solution for those things. Like you talked about that spiritual toolkit, right? I have these things when all these things pop up in my life, my character defects or my shortcomings or, the 7 deadly sins. We all got those at least, right? I have a spiritual toolkit, but I could give you a Home Depot and you can still never build a house, right?
You're right.
You don't know how to use that saw. You don't know if I should use screws or nails, right? I know I sure as heck don't.
I got 10 thumbs, so I'm with you there. I
Amen,
understand that totally.
right? But I can take this spiritual toolkit and I can ask this man to teach me how to swing this hammer, and I can ask this man. And if you're a woman, I suggest you go with woman, right? That's why I keep saying men for me. Um, or whatever, you can do whatever. I'm not trying to get political there, but I can go to another man and he can show me, do I need plywood or particle board, or do I need white or black, or do I need long or small?
Yeah.
I have these men that help me use these toolkits. And by the way, like I own a pressure washing business. I've been doing this over 10 years. I am one of the best, right? My record shows it, my work shows it, my credentials show it, but I'm ever continuing to learn, right? I'm always trying to remain teachable, not just in my business, but in my spiritual life.
Yep.
Not just in my spiritual life, but my mental life too. Because, man, I could wake up and do my prayers and meditation and invite God into my life and make, a couple $1,000. And by the time I go to bed, I'm feeling like a loser.
Yeah. Well, while we're on that topic, because I've been watching your business grow over the years.
Yes, sir.
I watched you from a beat up old vehicle to where you got now, and I've seen the changes. So obviously your business is doing good. And let's take an opportunity to let the people know that who's out there. How would they get in touch with it? Because you do both residential and commercial.
Correct. So just a little background, because you have seen me up and down with it. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I started with a buddy, and we were just didn't know what we were doing. And when I went away, I was doing it, and I was passionate about it. So I was always looking for an opportunity to do it. I got out. I was in sober living. The guy that owned the sober house let me borrow the minivan, and then Sunday after church for a year, I worked 7 days a week. Sunday after church, I load up that minivan with some buckets and some jugs and a ladder right through the middle, barely touching the windshield. Don't tell him. And then I was doing it with a friend and borrowing equipment and borrowing a truck, and now I have my own company. So my company is called Clean and Green. We are full residential and commercial. We work for a lot of property management and contractors. And my business has really taken off the last couple of years. Find me on Facebook. You can look up my name or the business name. Got a website, cleanandgreenoutdoorservices.com. Or you can just look out the window. I'm probably in your neighborhood.
That's it. That's it. And that's I'm an entrepreneur, so I greatly appreciate what you've been able to do, and I've seen the growth.
Absolutely.
I've seen the growth. A couple things I want to bring out to our public too is that the Flagler Drug Court Foundation, we deal predominantly. Our main focus was to help people in the drug court program, relieve them of some of the pressures that they're under, so they can concentrate on their recovery. And then in 2020, we got the first grant in the community to give free Narcan away.
Amen.
So we've become an educator in our community now, and going that. And as you talk about, it's people that relapse. And I get people that come up to us when we're in an event and we ask them if they'd like Narcan. They say, well, we don't need it. And we're happy to hear that. But you might need it. You might come across somebody that needs it.
Absolutely.
Because our philosophy is, you won't recover if you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So if you're still making those kind of decisions and it leads you to an overdose, and there's somebody that has that Narcan there, I tell people the only time I've ever had to use it so far, I'm driving into my neighborhood. There's a guy pulled off the side of the road, slumped over his steering wheel. Another couple had already gotten out of their car. They're calling 911. I jumped out, took a look, and had to dose him twice with Narcan before EMS got there. He lived that day. I don't know his name. I didn't care. Okay? It's just like CPR. You want to help somebody survive, you do what you got to do.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things that the community has to look at. That the couple that heads up our Narcan group for the foundation, they lost a daughter to an overdose. And they didn't live where most people think.
Yep.
They lived in a guarded, gated community.
She was a personal friend of mine.
Yep. And, I'm a little bit of an antagonist to our city and our county. Over the last 5-6 years, we've been between the second and 10th highest overdose county out of the 67 in Florida, based on population.
Wow.
And at one point, we were the highest overdose death county. And it wasn't where people think it is. It's not in the hood. It's not out in the western part of the county.
Right.
It's here in Palm Coast.
Absolutely.
It's where the money is. It's where we find most of it happening. It's the largest population in our county.
If you don't mind me saying too, I'm a big advocate for what our sheriff is doing and what the chief is doing at the jail. But man, once you bond out, or once you get out, or once they're not in drug court, then what? Right? Like, they have no more accountability. My accountability is what kept me sober through most of it. When I wasn't working a program and I wasn't connected to God, that fear of getting in trouble kept me sober some days. And whatever it takes to keep you sober today. That's how I look at it. But yeah, they get out of jail. And then what? They get done with drug court and you get them a certificate. Like you said, they know that they're there, that you're there. But sometimes I think it's my responsibility.
Oh,
right?
There's no question about that.
When somebody comes to AA and they say, hey, I'm new, it's my first meeting. We got these when and wheres. It's got a phone list. All the men pass it around to the men. The women pass it around to the women. They put their phone number on there. And then I never hear from them. It is my job, it is my duty, it's my obligation to go up to that man and try to get his number if he's got a phone. If not, how can I get in contact with you? When are you going to your next meeting? Hey, I go to these meetings on Tuesday. Tomorrow's Thursday. We go to a meeting in Ormond. We do dinner before that. Let me pick you up. Monday, we have some fun. It's just a group of sober guys playing a little pickup game of softball, right? Everybody's welcome. 5 p.m. You need a ride? What section you live in? I know a guy over there. Let me give you his number, right? It's our job as the community, not just condemn them when we see their mugshot. You know what I mean? But maybe if I would have, you know, it's funny. My mom used to take me to Walmart when I was a kid and talk to everybody. We'd be there for 3 items. We'd be there for 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in line. And I get real embarrassed as a kid. You know, I said to her one day, I said, "Why are you always talking to people?" You know, she said, "You never know what someone's going through, and a smile could change their life." You know, and I never forgot that. You know, holding the door for somebody, you know, it ain't got to be much. I'm not telling you to give your life savings to this foundation that probably doesn't even get the money anyways, right? But you know, a dollar at the gas station for a cold water, or a hot dog for the man sitting there, or holding the door, or checking on the guy slumped over in your neighborhood. Sometimes it's life or death.
Yep.
Sometimes a smile is life or death.
I think you got that. You're 110% correct on that. If people would just smile or wave, you don't have to know them.
Yeah.
That can lift somebody up so far. I've been attending a local facility here in town that has people that have been sick in there, and they're in there and doing their medical recovery and physical recoveries. And that's what I say to the people there. I don't know who you are, but if you walk down the aisles and you smile, that could be the one thing that lifts them up for the day.
Absolutely.
And it's so important. And what does it cost you?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, we're going to get wrapped up here. And if do you have anything closing that you'd like to add to today?
Yeah, I would just want to thank you again for this opportunity. I'm grateful to even be considered to do something like this. You know, it's just a blessing in itself. But you know, something I want to say is that I've learned recently, you know, about this attitude of gratitude. But gratitude is not a noun, it's not a thing, it's a verb, it's an
Yes.
action, right? And even when I'm not feeling grateful, I can still act as if, I can still act grateful. I can hold that door of somebody crying on the inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I help myself is to help others. Don't ask me how this works, right? I don't know anything about much, right? But I do know about faith, right? And I'm gonna take my truck for example. I don't know how that thing runs, right? And it's got something to do with gas and oil and spark. I don't know, right? But I do know about faith. And I do know that when I grab that stick and put it on the letter D, it takes me where I need it to go. I don't need to know how it works for it to work, right? So I don't need to know how helping you is going to help me. You know, when I told somebody I was struggling with business, he said, take a meeting into Epic. You know, when I told a man I was having trouble praying at night, he said, why don't you pray for somebody else instead of yourself at night? You know, so when you're not feeling grateful, why don't you just act as if somebody that is grateful? You got a problem with God, why don't you just act like somebody who believes in God and see how far that takes you?
Yeah. That's good advice all the way through. So, Michael, it has been a pleasure to have you here.
Might as well.
We'll try to have you come back maybe a few months from now. We'll talk some more. Get
Anytime.
it out there into the community, and let them know what is happening. So, this is Mike Feldbauer. I am signing off here on the Road to Recovery from the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation, and this is coming to you from the Flagler Voice Podcast Center. So, everybody, have a great day. Enjoy, and here we go.